you know, we're, as I said, nearly 4 weeks into this war. You, by all intelligence, I guess, you know, experts, are somewhat stalled, certainly around Kyiv and in other parts. There seems to be low morale amongst your troops. There seems to be equipment breakdowns and command and control issues. My first question is, what does President Putin think he has achieved in Ukraine to date?
Well, first of all, not yet. He hasn't achieved yet, and we're speaking about special and military operation that is going on, and it is going on strictly in accordance with the plans and with purposes that were established beforehand. And of course, well, first of all, I think we have to speak about the reasons for this operation. I mean, because speaking about the morale against our amongst our military. Of course, you operate data and information coming from different media and from your intelligence, but you would probably have to doubt this information. You have to doubt it, and you have to think twice whether it is true or not.
Well, here's the thing, Mr. Peskov. You know, intelligence that really predicted the invasion turned out to be true, despite what you all told us, you know, from the Kremlin. So let's just get past that. We've also heard, you know, civilians and journalists who've seen Russian troops and who've recounted. But that's be that as it may. When you say he hasn't achieved, President Putin hasn't achieved yet, what do you foresee? Because this was going to be, according to your own side, in the press, in the state-sponsored media in Russia, a pretty quick operation. It was even suggested that, you know, within a couple of days that, quote-unquote, Ukraine would return to, quote-unquote, Mother Russia. What has gone wrong, and what do you see for the next phase of this?
Well, of course, no one would think from the very beginning about a couple of days. It's a serious operation with serious purposes. And I think if we try to remember those purposes, those main goals of the operation, it's to get rid of the military potential of Ukraine. And actually, this is why our military are targeting only military goals and military objects on the territory of Ukraine, not civil ones. Russian military are not hitting civil aims, civil targets. Number two is to ensure that Ukraine changes from entire Russian center to a neutral country. And in this sense, let's remember that after the collapse of the Soviet Union, actually the neutral status was fixed in a declaration of independence of the country. Number three, to get rid of the nationalist battalions and nationalist regiments who are now opposing Russian troops, who are now trying to cover themselves under the shield of civilians, thus paving a way for civil casualties.
Dmitry,
and also, I beg your pardon, if you let me, and also to ensure that Ukraine acknowledges the fact that Crimea is also an untakeable part of Russia, and that People's Republics of Lugansk and Donetsk are already independent states, that Ukraine actually has lost them after the coup that happened in 2014.
Okay, so basically you are putting and laying out the original demands from President Putin, which I understand seem not to have changed. Let us talk about civilian infrastructure. Look, I know you guys say that you're not targeting civilians, and you've just told me it was a special military operation, which is, I know, what the Kremlin military censorship demands. It is a war and it is an invasion, and we're all watching it all over global television, no matter what you tell your own people. There are so many civilian targets that it's hard to count them right now. And, you know, you may deny it, But even the Chinese, Dmitry, even the Chinese who are your friends, have expressed a very, very deep concern about civilian targets. Let me just read what the Foreign Ministry has said. It is deeply grieved to see the conflict between Ukraine and Russia and highly concerned about the damage done to civilians. They are very, very concerned. Those are your friends, the Chinese, not weirdo journalists or anybody who's actually watching it with their own eyes and can tell the truth. So the real question is, what is President Putin's strategic goal in blasting the civilian infrastructure of places like Mariupol, which we are watching turn to smithereens for the last several weeks now? What's the strategic goal?
Well, the strategic goal is to clear up the Mariupol from nationalistic regiments who are there in a heavily covered environment. And by the way, they're simply not letting people out from the city, from the town. And this is a problem because now we're receiving lots of refugees coming from there. And they simply tell us, they're eyewitnesses. They simply tell us that they were used like a shield. They were used under heavy bombardment. And then those nationalists, they were killing people who would want to leave the city. And now the main goal is to get rid of those bad guys there.
Dmitry, we also have reporters who are quite close to Mariupol, and they are watching because actually some civilians are getting out right now. And they obviously tell a completely different story, that they have been prevented from getting out. And we know that any attempt to establish any kind of humanitarian corridor has collapsed under the weight of Russian shelling, even when you give assurances. There is no food going in, and your own defense ministry said these last few days that only if Mariupol surrenders will they allow food, water, medicine to go in there. I've covered a siege, probably the longest in modern history, the siege of Sarajevo. So I know the playbook very, very well. So the question is, why are they then coming out and telling us that? But also, there are reports that Russia is taking civilians and citizens from Mariupol, taking them over to Russia, and in some cases putting them, way out in the hinterlands and to work. In perhaps work camps, I don't know, but putting them to work.
No, this is not true. This is not true. It's a fake. It's a fake. And then, well, believe me, we're all living, well, not only under the circumstances of military operation. We're living in a severe informational war, and war of fakes. And then, well, you have to know the situation from the outside, from the inside, and sometimes it's very hard to understand what is going on there. So, and if you're journalists, and we're receiving information there from our military information, and then we know what is being said by the people who were well led by those nationalistic regiments to leave the city.